Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So, warm welcome to Luiza for joining us. Thank you for joining us tonight. You've been traveling a lot recently, but I'm glad you could make it. We usually like to start off with going back a little bit in time and finding out a little bit about where you come from.
Sure. So thank you very much for inviting me here. I feel really honored to be here tonight. I remember the first startup brain was for me 2 years ago and in Google. And I was very inspired by the founder then, so I have great expectations from myself as well. Thank you for being here. So I'm Romanian. I don't come from Switzerland. I moved in Switzerland 8.5 years ago. So my story started in a small city in Romania. Then I have been traveling around also around the country, and then I moved to Barcelona, where I actually pursued my education. And then I came to Switzerland. I actually went to University of St. Gallen, and afterwards I fell in love with the country. I really loved Switzerland. And I took the typical corporate job, and then a second corporate job, and then I came back to my books, and those books were telling me that, you know, you have a dream, and in order to pursue your dream, which was actually creating my own company, one of them at least, how do you do that? It's such a comfortable way to be in Switzerland and get a job, get your monthly payment, have your holidays and so on. I mean, how do you become a founder? You just wake up one day, I have a company. For me, I think I'm here today because I really had a dream since being a teenager. And I did everything I could to actually be able to create something out of what I believed I could. And this brought me to the company I built today. I created a company a bit less than 2 years ago called Comet Health. I can tell you more if you let me speak. I just speak.
We will find out more.
Maybe I need to find a new way.
See if that works better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so you said as a teenager you were already thinking about wanting to run a business yourself.
Mm-hmm.
As a child, when you were younger, going to earlier to school, did you also have that? So also a lot of times the entrepreneurship bug bites people in different ways. Sometimes it's because their parents or a member of their family were entrepreneurial. Did you have that in your family?
No, my both parents are engineers, so it was not coming from the family. But also to give a bit background of my country. I mean, until in my early days, in my early few years, it was a communist country, and everybody was dreaming about democracy. When my father was one of the biggest believer of democracy and what you can actually do, and I kind of grew up in this mentality that education is very important, that, you know, it's much more than what we actually see in communism. And for me, I think one of the biggest thing I got from my childhood was my father, who was always telling me that, you know, if you don't want to end up a waitress, you need to study. And I think even today, I have this in the back of my mind. When you come from Eastern Europe, one of the biggest things is the education. I think it's not the same system like in Switzerland, which I believe is great, but in Eastern Europe, you really need to go and you need to study. And this was the first impulse from my father that I got, that actually you need to go abroad. My father also used to live in Germany for many years, and then what I got from my mother, she was very much into a lot of self-development books and school of thoughts. And I came across one book that actually changed my life, which is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, written by Stephen Covey. And it was one thing there which stayed into my mind even now, and it's been many, many years since I was in high school, that you need to imagine your funerals. And if you end up at the end of life, how do you want yourself to remind yourself of? So if you can get out of your body and you look at yourself, is it what you achieved until that moment? What makes you satisfied? All those dreams, all those skills you think you have, and so on, would you be happy? And then you kind of like reverse backwards and you find out actually what is really important for you. So instead of living a life that is kind of given by us, by society, by parents, by school, by employers, is a life that you can create. And actually going from that back like to the to the age I was, this is how I realized creating something, creating a company, and not only creating a company that makes a change, create something meaningful and something greater than myself, was one of the most important things for me. And then going backward, I knew that I can do this going abroad, fulfilling my education abroad, maybe following the corporate job, getting a bit of experience, and then suddenly at some point you actually do the step,
right? And
you just try it.
So speaking of your company, your startup, you said it's called Comed Health. What's the elevator pitch? I imagine you have a lot of experience in giving elevator pitches.
Yeah, of course. The thing is, you don't know, suddenly you take the 30 seconds, the 1 minute, 20 minutes. So it's always confusing.
Let's go with the 30-second version.
So talking about meaningful, creating something meaningful and greater than yourself, one thing that probably you don't know, every 6 seconds somebody dies because of communication and efficiencies in hospitals. On an average, everybody dies every 1.20 seconds, so for every different causes. So actually the third cause of that is medical error. First one is heart disease, second one is cancer, then the third one is medical error. So you have about 250,000 in US alone dying because of this reason, and 80% of that in hospital is because of communication and efficiencies. So this is when I actually got this study and I said, wow, this is huge. It's the same in Europe. And this basically, it came the idea of Comet Health, and how can we actually make efficient communication in hospital? How can we actually revolutionize the status quo and actually save lives ultimately? So this is how the company was created. And we basically develop a secure messaging, a smart messaging for hospital, for doctors, enabling them to communicate efficiency and advance the care flows.
Okay. And before you started Comed, is this your first startup?
First official one, yes.
Okay. So what's the unofficial one?
So actually so for me, I go back to maybe 4 or 5 years ago when I went to my book and I thought, okay, how do you start a company? And then I started to like write down how I start a company. And one of them was Startup Weekend. For me, Startup Weekend changed my life because it's the same like Startup Green, it's a great community of people who are enthusiasts about entrepreneurship, people who are entrepreneurs, people who want to develop something, they want to do something great, they don't know what to do, so they go there. And this is what I did the first time. I had one specific idea in the food sector. All my ideas came from my own needs. And then I think this is the best way to create ideas out of your own problems that you have daily life, and then you try to create a business case around it. And I went to a total of 4 startup weekends, and 2 of them I actually won with 2 of my ideas. One of them was also Comet Health. And the one that actually advanced the most was the one before Comet Health, which was into the medical travel field. So basically I was working on developing a platform similar to booking.com, but for medical travel. So for example, in Switzerland, it's very difficult or expensive to go to a dentist. And many of you, I suppose, they can go abroad, or they can go to Germany, which is across the border, or they go in Eastern Europe. Hungary is the capital of dentistry, the same for cosmetic surgeries, but it's also the reverse. A lot of people from India, Pakistan, and so on, they come to Switzerland for cancer treatments and so on. So this was the first startup that I actually created, but I was a single founder, and I do not believe in single founders. But this was also the moment when I decided to leave corporate world. This is when, after we won the startup weekend in September 2015, actually I realized in that team, we were 8 people in the team, that this is the best version of myself, and I need to create a company. I need to do something. This is where all my passion, I can bring all the passion and enthusiasm. And then I pursue that, and luckily I found Mark, who is my business partner. He's my perfect complementarity in terms of business, and then we created Comet together. I went to another startup weekend, I had this idea, Mark was in the team, and then we decided to go for it.
For me, that's also very exciting that you're here now, because it was at that startup weekend where you presented Komed Health that I was also mentoring.
That's true.
So
that's actually very true. You are one of our mentors. It's very, very true, yeah.
So it's nice to see the progress that's been made over this last year, and the fruits that have come out of that.
Yeah, and thank you very much to be a coach. For the ones who don't know Startup Weekend, I totally recommend it. It's so much full of passion and people who have full-time jobs during the week. And then you can go, you meet a lot of like-minded people who just want to do something over the weekend, even if they maybe will never actually create a company or so on. But yeah.
And also, if you don't have your own idea, it's still
exactly
an incredible experience. Just to
it's
be part
incredible.
Of the team.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very true. So why did your what didn't work, or why did your health travel concept not take off?
So that one didn't take off because of, I believe, the number one actually is timing when you create a startup. I think if you don't have the right timing, there are many companies, great companies, that fail because you are not in the right time.
True.
But the second one is team. I do not believe in single founders, and I believe team is really the most important thing. I believe there are a lot of ideas, and if you don't have the right team, you can never implement it. And the market might tell you different things. So many times, most of the startups do a lot of pivots, which means they change a lot until basically they succeed. For example, Slack. I compare our company with Slack for hospitals, the one who knows Slack. Slack started as a gaming company, and they ended up being a $50 billion company as a valuation. And if you don't have a great team, you cannot do that. And I met a lot of great people, but either I met people very similar to me, which doesn't add too much value, either I met people that didn't want to take the risk. As I said, if you are Swiss, or if you live in Switzerland, you sometimes, why would I give this away? I mean, the trade-off is very big. You are not hungry. People from Berlin are hungry, or people from many other countries where are not like here. And that was the reason why I didn't pursue. So for me, more than the idea of that business, which today I believe in it, it was a team.
Okay. And with Comed Health, you started it together with your co-founder, Mark. Where did you meet Mark?
So actually, when I was in this moment, I think you have to have a very clear target, what you want in your life, and a clear objective, but then you have to be very flexible on the way. If you're not flexible and open-minded, I think it's very hard. And for me, I knew I wanted to create this company, but most of all, it was to be flexible. I even got a bit drawn in reviewing other potential companies where I could join along. And I went to the startup weekend idea to find a founder. And this is how I met Mark for the week before the startup weekend. And then he's a great guy, but he's a terrible pitcher. So I realized this about him. And he pitched his idea in the startup weekend. he got 0 votes, but not because he had a bad idea, he just didn't know how to pitch it. And he was terrible in drawing as well. So basically...
He's not here tonight, right?
He's not here, but I always make fun of him. This is one of the things I say, luckily you were back. Now he pitches great. But back then it was funny. And then he joined my team. We were a team of 6 people, probably you remember. And we actually we were 5 people, but after we won, we have a 6th person who joined us, who was also in the startup weekend. And we, actually in the meantime, I even found a founder for the previous company. But for me, I felt that I have to go with this one. You know, it's this gut feeling and it tells you,
to
no.
Focus.
This time I really feel that it's something. Yeah. Because for me, the moment when it like just did a click or... Yeah. I went to the hospital in that weekend, startup weekend. And I realized doctors use pagers and nurses to communicate. I mean, I didn't even know probably how a pager looks properly until that moment. I mean, basically it's this device that has a number, that you see a number showing, it's a number, okay? And then it makes a loud noise, and then you need to go to the first wall phone, and then you need to call that number. And it can be anything. It can be a patient is dying, or a patient is well, or a patient needs water. So, and this is a lot of interruption. And I was surprised and outraged. How can this be the healthcare system in Switzerland, University Hospital Zurich, Angel Hospital, and so on? And then I realized the big opportunity that actually lies into improving communication in healthcare.
So did you sneak in and just put on a white robe and follow around, or how did that work out? How did you manage to stalk some doctors?
So you just go to the hospital and you just ask people, do you have 30 seconds to talk to me? We did this for like 3 months afterwards, every single day. So every single day I was going to the hospital, like we covered like 20 hospitals. It was me and one of the guys who was in the team back then.
Guerrilla marketing or
you just go there and you are very humble. You say, look, we are doing a research, which we were doing a research. We had a full questionnaire that we would ask. We are doing this questionnaire, we are doing a research. Can you spend some time with us, 5 minutes, 30 seconds, however time you may wish. And like this, in 3 months, we got about 100 interviews. We realized also that the best time to go to the hospital is during lunchtime, because you find the people when they're a bit more off guard and they're actually having their coffees and you just disturb their coffees. And out of 5 people, it's really like in sales. Out of 5 people, 2 will not talk to you, 1 will say, I give you 5 minutes, 1 gives you 10, and 1 maybe becomes your advisor in the end, which happened in the end. And and then the results were more than 95% positive. Then we realized we are really after something, and we didn't write a line of code in the first 3 months. We just validated our hypothesis. It was very lean. And actually the technology started to be developed, the real technology, in December. We were just validating, playing with a lot of MVPs, or not MVP, prototypes and so on, to actually understand really how this has to be designed.
Okay. And at the beginning, when you were first putting together your company, did you talk about equity? Was it more people than just you and Mark? Was there a bigger discussion to be had? How did you approach the topic as a lean startup with, as far as I understand, no money to start off with? Obviously, there's the question of equity and shares of the company and who owns what percentage. How did you approach that?
I think before this question came, I invented something called co-founder assessment, which I actually did. I already did that with my previous project, let's call it. Yeah. Because I realized when you start something with somebody that you don't know that person, you really have to start like putting a lot of questions. Some are comfortable questions, some are uncomfortable questions. So we basically, as I said, we started at 6 people. And we had established when we do this co-founder assessment, so I was the only woman there. And the guy saw that I'm totally nuts. What does she want with this co-founder assessment? But in the end, they actually realized that this was one of the best things we could have done because we discussed everything, including topics like what happens if this company succeeds and you are not a good CTO anymore, or I'm not a good CEO anymore. Are you willing to give up? I mean, is your ego more important, or what is more important for you? So we discussed from things like values to vision to everything. And two of the guys actually got out afterwards. One realized he's not an entrepreneur. So imagine you are basically at a table, normally over lunch or dinner or like drinks, a very informal setup. And then you start having all these questions you could have prepared before. But of course, now we are talking the two of us, but I'm sure somebody in the audience would like to ask something else based on what I say, right? And then you have a discussion over 5 hours.
Right.
And you grill that person on all sides in 5 hours. And one person decided, well, guys, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a service designer. I love to help you as much as I can, but I'm just not an entrepreneur, which was great to see that. Another guy, we realized we clash in values. We cannot work together if we do not have the same values. We are still friends, we talk to each other. And another guy left to Singapore. And the other, the last one that actually also left was the same. And in the end, by September, it was only me and Mark, so we started in May.
Okay.
And then we started to discuss shares, because now it was clear, the team was created. So basically the thing between me and Mark and the shares were decided based on also who put how much risk so far. So, for example, Mark joined full-time after he had the full proof that there is a problem, there is a big problem. So, of course, this balance went a bit like higher on my side. Then you see also who is the most critical person in the company. Then you look also now, but also in the future, who brings the most contacts, who is talking to the investors. I mean, you have a lot of different aspects. You have a lot of stuff on the internet as well. And we kind of put all these things together, and we did different ways, and in the end we got to the same numbers. And then very soon after, we met our third team member. Like, we met him in October, and he was crazy enough to leave his job in second day. And he joined us 1st of January full-time, and then basically also it was an interesting way how we got to how much shares he should receive. I mean, but also you have different ways to look at it in the end.
Have you heard of the book and the concept slicing pie?
Yes, we also heard about it. I know that, for example, some startups use that as well. I mean, we use different concepts, not only one.
So
we also use that one.
A variety of ideas and concepts to come to your own valuation.
Whatever came to us, right? Whatever felt.
I guess the key point is that you discussed that early on. A lot of startups, a lot of founders tend to, like you said, focus on growing the business, growing the product, developing or whatever it is, and then further down the line, when money starts to come in, it's like, oh, we need to start talking about that. But it's important before.
I think it's very important, because if you have, I would imagine if I would have these discussions now, it would have been a chaos. The whole thing would blow up.
Yeah.
Because everybody thinks so different. And I think when you do this quite early stage, also not too early, you cannot speak about it in the first week, but you can speak about it in 6 months. Also, a different problem that I see with startups is roles and responsibilities. They don't define a CEO, and they don't know who has what role in the company, and they clash over the same responsibilities. And then they decide, after the company was incorporated, after it got financed, they don't have a CEO, and then basically becomes a really, really tough time to actually move forward. For us, for example, for me and Mark, this was very, very clear from the beginning. I have this part, you have this part. And if, for example, I just give you a stupid example, which is quite obvious, I'm responsible for the investor relation. If he has an investor, he passes to me. He doesn't even want to handle the investor. Right. Okay. If somebody has a very product-specific person, I handed to Mark immediately.
Okay. If anyone has any questions, just raise your hand and I'll try to catch you as well. So feel free to ask questions as well. So you now have a proof of concept project with Inselspital in Bern, right?
One of them, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you go from that's, I mean, it's one of the most prestigious hospitals in Switzerland, and so how do you go from being startup weekend startup to having a proof of concept with a big hospital?
I think it starts very much into this. I have this thought that if you really want something, the only thing that can stop you reach it is yourself. Because for me I wanted so much to create this company, and I want so much, and it's still very difficult. We are just at the beginning of our way, that I don't know the answers most of the time. You just go for it. And you try and you try. You get kicked out of the door, you enter on the window. Also, you need to know when to leave space to people, because you don't want to be too insistent. So for example, Insel, it was built from one thing to the other. I mean, I basically, from the very beginning, I went everywhere. I to a lot of hospitals, to a lot of events. I think network is so important, because one person can recommend you to a different person, and this is how it works. And we also made a lot of applications, like we are a CTI startup, so it stands for Commission of Technology and Innovation. And you just go to all these events. Sometimes you do not know exactly what you get out of it, but you just go there, you talk to people, you tell who you are, what you want to do, and do you have some contacts in hospitals? Questions for you as well. So this is how it works, and then you basically speak with people and say, oh, well, I know this guy, or well, oh, I know that guy. And in Insel Hospital, for example, the president of CTI, which normally you will see, well, he's a president, I'm not going to ask him directly, do you have any contact in hospital? But I did. And he happened to be quite close to Chef Arts from Insel Hospital. He recommended us, and I had this person targeted. It's very funny. I had a list of people I wanted my leads. I wanted to contact, and I said, well, I need to find a way to reach these people. I cannot reach them cold email. And somehow all those people come to you from different ways, and this is fascinating. And then he was crazy enough, the Chef Arts, to actually believe in us and give us the opportunity to run around his clinic and interview doctors, trial and error, a lot of trial and error. So we basically, at the core of our technology is that we really develop every single feature with the doctors. And we did it until now, we are doing from now on. Then we got recommended internally to radiology department and now to orthopedics. But it's true, Insel Hospital, it's a very difficult hospital to sell directly to the management, especially there are a lot of changes happening on the higher level at the moment. But if you have the endorsement and the stickiness to the doctor, like you create these network effects, and they basically love what you do, they get intoxicated with your own passion in the end, because they really see you're a startup and you really are serious. And this happened in many cases. Some people met us maybe in December last year, and they met us now from University Hospital Zurich, and they say, you guys are the only guys that actually stick to what you said. And it's great. I mean, this normally doesn't happen. And they see that you are actually consistent and persistent in what you do.
Do you see, I mean, the medical industry is such a traditional industry. Do you see it as being open to disruption? I mean, what you're doing is like you said, I mean, it's 2017 and people running around with pagers. It's like,
how is that possible?
Exactly. So how open to disruption, to new technologies, to new ways of working, do you see that? Have you faced a lot of, has it been difficult to get through, or a lot of barriers, or are the doctors and is the industry curious and hungry for something new?
Okay, so there are several questions in your question. So healthcare, the same like like finance industry, they are the most conservative industry that exists at the moment, and I think healthcare is even worse. And it's also traditionally how they were built. They are public institutions, most of them. They are ruled by cantons, by governments. They have the payers, they have the patient, they have a lot of, it's very multidisciplinary, let's put it like that. The thing is, everybody realizes that digitalization is now, is not something it will happen in the future, it's happening. And to quote doctors, they say, well, when I'm outside this hospital, I live in 2017. When I'm inside this hospital, I feel I'm in Stone Age when it comes to communication. And the thing is, every medical device in a hospital in Switzerland, it's state of the art. They really have great technology to identify, like medtech, it's big. But when it comes to communication, to IT infrastructure, they still think old way. Oh, the IT department has to fix my computer. This is how the old IT. But this is changing so much at the moment. There was a study done by Swisscom, actually just published recently, that 80% of hospitals in Switzerland are embracing e-health. And the interesting thing is everybody talks about it. I mean, I haven't met a hospital that they don't say, oh yeah, we are in e-health now. But they don't have a strategy, most of them. Some of them they do, so they are in different stages. Some of them they have it implemented, some of them they are approving it now, some of them they are in development. So we see it, it's still a very difficult market, but as I talked about the timing, now is the timing, because it's this moment of change. So I hope we are really at the right time, because this change is happening now. It's happening here. As you said, I travel a lot also in the European community, and I go to a lot of conferences and events, and it's exactly the same. It's an industry that is changing, it's shaping, people realize a need. And most of all, also the whole government rules are changing. So it's called DRG system, which basically makes hospital, they need to become efficient. If they are not efficient, then they actually go into the risk of being closed or being bought by private institution, which is not the idea. So this is one thing, and our solution really, it's proving that actually we can improve efficiencies. And when it comes to doctors, they actually love it, most of them. But like in any technology, you have the innovators, the early adopters, the innovators, the guys who are trying after some other trial, and the laggards, right? And we are working on the early innovators, the early adopters. These are the guys we are working on.
To kick it off.
To kick it off, okay. And you need to always identify in an institution these guys, right? And then you have actually network effects.
Okay. Noemi, I'm stuck with the cable. Can you? Yeah. The gentleman.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Luiza. Thank you. I just have a question. Basically, it's you questioning my question. I try really to understand what is your company about, and I couldn't find it. So, like they say in the elevator pitch, it's like, what do you sell? What products you do specifically? To whom do you sell it? Where are you doing your business? It's just locally, cantonally, whatever. And what is next? In which stage is your company?
Okay.
That is what you need. And something that I always think is that any business opportunity, because you never know who is around you, could be interesting, which type of steps you would like to have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Hans. So yeah, a lot of questions. I'll try to remember them. So the first one is basically what we do, and I think it's a valid question because probably my elevator pitch was focused more on the problem. So basically, for the ones who know Slack, we developed...
Who knows Slack? Pretty much everyone. Slack is what is Slack?
So I don't pitch Slack now, but for the ones who know Slack, Slack is, so we develop a Slack solution for hospitals. For the ones who do not know Slack,
maybe
no, I can
WhatsApp.
explain. I can explain.
Okay, you're the professional.
So basically, we develop a secure messaging, like WhatsApp, for hospital communication. So imagine this, you go to the hospital, so as a patient, so from the moment you come to the hospital, a chat room, like in WhatsApp, for example, is created in our system, which is a mobile desktop, and basically every doctor and nurse treating you from the moment you are coming to the hospital until you are leaving the hospital is communicating and collaborating in this chat room. So basically all the information about you as a patient is never lost. It's very easy that they can reach each other because you have a lot of different people treating you, different specialization. In 5 days you might have 50 different people treating you. So actually what they can do, they can share files securely, and they can get radiology reports, for example, when they are ready from the system, because what we do, we integrate it with the main electronic medical record of the hospital. So every hospital has a clinical system, and this is very complicated and complex, and doctors spend most of their time in front of this computer. But the idea is to have this data, whatever you need, mobile, and also like to enable fast, swift communication between medical staff. And in terms of further developing, we are actually looking to include the patient in the chat. So you will not see what doctors communicate about you, but you can address a question directly to the doctor or head of nurse. You can easily choose your menu in the hospital. You can easily see your lab results right away directly in your app, and so on. And what we want to do is like use all this data and use AI, deep learning technologies to actually automate the entire communication in this app, because most of it is just administrative, the way the doctor communicates. I took the patient here, prepared the bed, and so on. So as I said, we started in May 2016, so we are really early stage startup. We are 6 people in the team. At the moment, our focus is in Switzerland. We are in 3 different hospitals in Switzerland.
What does that mean in 3 different hospitals? So as a proof of concept?
As a pilot, yes. So we are piloting in 3 different hospitals.
So you have a beta version of your app, actually?
So our product is already, I mean, you can all download it in the App Store on iOS, and the other one is like, it works also on Android, but it's a web application since July already. So yeah, we basically have our product, but it's still a first version of our product. We are continuously developing. Every 2 weeks we bring new features and so on. And yeah, I mean, we have about 30 leads at the moment, in the sense that we are evaluating, discussing, meetings in that moment when we hope to go to recurring revenue, which will also make us raise a Series A.
Does the patient pay anything, or only the hospital?
Only the hospital. So it's a typical service, software as a service.
Right.
So depending on the number of users, you have a variable model per user per month.
And are you wanting to go international, or
yes,
so you
exactly.
are focused on
yes, so we evaluate UK, Germany, and we, as I said, we are integrated in the electronic medical records of a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is one way to actually extract data that you do not need to duplicate processes. The idea is to make the whole thing more efficient, more productive.
And save lives.
And save lives, yes. And the thing is, one of our partners is the engineers. They are in Switzerland, but they are also in Germany. And the other one is Deutsche Telekom. Right. So for us is using these partners to actually penetrate other markets. Okay. Does this answer your questions, or would I miss any question?
Can I shoot?
Yes.
Martin from Lausanne originally. We've had similar discussions with hospitals. We're doing remote sensing in hospitals. And we were actually quite shocked to find out that USZ has all patient cards digitalized, so that nurses and doctors can look at them simultaneously. Whereas CS London, which is private hotel-like hospital, everything is still handwritten,
Exactly.
which causes for miseries, as you pointed out, and especially people cannot have a look at it manually. Does that, say, difference in management from private to public also, is that reflected in your way on how you approach those institutions?
Okay, so I mean, being a startup, we started with public hospital because they were more open to startups. I think private institutions, if you do not prove them black and white, how you can help them reduce costs or how you can make fast a return of investment is difficult. So for us, private hospitals are the ones that we believe in the moment we have those numbers actually will be our fastest customers. The thing with a public institution is even if they are willing to give you a lot of time, the sales process is very long. You need to lobby a lot of people. You need to talk to the CFO, CEO, CIO, person next to CIO, doctors, and so on. So I think, I believe starting, yeah, it's great when you have a great product with private hospital, but when you are still developing, public institutions are more open. Yeah. So it's a company, I mean, one of our competitors in US, they proved that with secure messaging, you can reduce more than half a day of hospitalization time. If you put this in numbers, in perspective, in Insel Hospital, where they have 45,000 inpatients per year, you save more than 64 million per year. But we also do, like part of this pilot, we do a lot of metrics, try to actually prove. We just now released a paper proving in a hospital that we can reduce half an hour. That every doctor spends half an hour by doing inefficient communication, getting the wrong calls, being disturbed, and so on. That actually can be replaced with the app. So you need to just put these numbers in perspective, and this is what we are looking for.
So we have first back there.
Yeah, don't need, I think. So who is your real client? Is it the doctors? Is it the patients?
So the client at the moment, the person who pays, is a hospital or whoever has a budget. I mean, whoever has money is a customer. But generally, no, it's easy as that, right? But generally, if you want to roll out a product like ours, you need to have the CEO, CIO, CFO in. When you do a pilot, it's always also fine with only a chief arts, because he has enough budget to pay for a pilot. The problem when you only work with a chief arts, with a senior doctor in a hospital, is one, he doesn't have enough budget, but the other thing, the most important, you cannot integrate into the interfaces of a hospital. And then basically that creates a lot of duplication of work, which doesn't prove the true benefit of our product. And in order that our product really is creates values in the moment, is integrated, even to a very superficial level, but is used by everyone. Because if you only use it on an island, on one hospital, in one clinic, and the other no, it also doesn't have the biggest value. And the idea is to eliminate all those devices, pager, the tastature phone, fax, email. I mean, email is relatively difficult to replace. And WhatsApp. Doctors use WhatsApp to communicate about patients. Every doctor takes pictures of the patient and send it to another person. They send pictures, they send all the radiology reports, and this was confirmed by a doctor just the other day. Say, yeah, they just sent all the radiology reports via WhatsApp. So basically, the idea is to replace all of this with one secure way of communication and collaboration.
And your targets are just to follow up. The target is to improve patient care or to save money in the hospital?
Both.
Or to improve, if that's the...
So the thing is, when you, I mean, my meaning or what drives me, if I know that we can actually save lives. I spend a lot of time in hospitals shadowing doctor, observing more than 2 months by now. And I saw error in my own eyes, and I said, my God, I hope I never end up in a hospital. This is ridiculous. So this is one thing, and then you realize, really, we can do this with our product. We just need to get there. But the other thing is, if you talk to a chief arts with a senior doctor, you basically, you sell him efficiency. I can help you reduce doctor to doctor time. I can help you reduce interruptions. You have a lot of interruption. I can help you communicate better with your staff, and so on. I can help you, instead of spending half an hour to find the other specialist, I can help you find this in 1 minute, in 2 seconds.
Part of the question, I guess, is who you're selling to, and then that's part of the mission or part of the goal. If you're talking to the chief financial officer of the hospital and you're telling him you can save his budget,
money, yeah.
then that becomes more relevant, right?
What you're really saying to the patient, I'll give you better care.
Exactly.
The thing is, we do not sell to patients, so the patient is not even part of the app at the moment. The patient is the moment you do an embarking in the hospital will tell you, look, we have this great app, if you want to communicate, we can download it for free. So the patient is not, the patient is only at the center of the communication. So we really want to enable patient centricity in the communication in hospital. Because doctors, funny enough, they don't think about the patient. They just think, they don't think I want to talk about you with that doctor. They think, oh, I want to talk to that doctor. And broken leg in room 3. So the idea is to put all this information in a context which is actually patient.
We have another question over here.
Luiza, I had a curiosity from your very concept. So your aim is to make communication efficient in hospitals. And I was thinking, okay, it's like for hospitals. I understand. Isn't one of your challenges the fact that, okay, doctors use faxes and pagers and whatnot, and it's slow. But then again, this is a routine that they know and that they've been doing for years. So in a sense, it's cognitively easier to do. And now they are switching to your technology, which objectively speaking is more efficient. But then again, there is maybe that gap there of actually jumping to a new routine and getting accustomed to it just in an initial stage till they get used to it. Mm-hmm. So that was my initial thought. But then, as I was waiting to pose my question, you mentioned that they already use WhatsApp and all these technologies to communicate. So maybe in a sense they were already doing this and you're just helping them take the next step. So in a nutshell, my question is, did you find that they have this hurdle in adoption that it takes a while for them to get on board, or is it something that comes very naturally and they just moved from WhatsApp to your platform? I don't know, what are your thoughts / findings on this?
I think it's very different from person to person, and as I mentioned before, you always, when you introduce a new technology, you need to actually target the early adopters, the innovators of this group of people. And when we target actually the doctors to develop the technology in order to sell it to the hospital managers, we basically, we realize they use WhatsApp and so on, but not every doctor and nurse is like that. But then if you show them the benefits, and also you have different personalities of people, if you actually start to prove them, look, this can improve your work, that can make that better, and they start to believe. But of course, it's about change management, it's about cultural. I mean, you need to convince a lot of people, but it's also, if you think about myself or yourself, or, I mean, who of us would have thought that we would go into a stranger's car 15 years ago, every day? I mean, I would say no way, or like living in a stranger's house.
I wasn't as much talking about the psychological adoption of it, because I think that comes once you see that it's efficient. I was thinking about the objective speed of the workflow, because you know what they say, you can't teach an old horse new tricks. I don't necessarily agree, but you know, there's some kernel of truth in there. So you know, you do your thing, like, I don't know, I give my grandmother an iPhone, right? She's not going to be fast with it. It is objectively better, more efficient, faster, but she's still on her old phone because she knows how to use that. So that's what I'm talking about, the more logistical aspect of it. I'm just curious how the adoption worked in your pilot, or I don't know if you're willing to talk about that. I think it's something very interesting to look at.
Sure. It's very, I mean, this is what we are doing now, and for the ones who actually do not use our technology, they can also use it on the desktop, right? You don't have to always use it. So the nurses are used with the desktop. So it's the same thing. Instead of putting into, like, instead of calling a number, they can actually use a desktop solution to do exactly the same thing, and they are used with a desktop. With the nurses, it's also like something cultural that in some hospital, nurses are not allowed to use a mobile. I mean, some hospitals leave them do that and some hospitals don't. And it's also a matter of, do you have a mobile strategy or not for those? But the doctors don't have that issues. And this is something
So you're starting with I guess the low-hanging fruit.
The low-hanging fruits, yes.
I guess that's a typical startup strategy till you gain traction, and then you get to the tipping point where it becomes the norm, and then it rolls out. I think Joel had a question.
Sure.
No, I can second finger fine.
Luiza, thanks. You said you had a
very. So my question has to do with the stage before you're actually off and running, right? Where
You're still walking.
Your partner. So you had sort of bought into the company before your partner, right? And you said an amazing statistic that 95% of your hypothesis during the interviews were validated. And I wanted to ask, in the mean methodology, it's typical that a validation for a problem or a solution is backed up with cash. So were those validations word of mouth, or did the hospital put money on the table and say, yes, I believe in your solution, here's the first 6 months subscription?
No, so we basically have funded everything with our own resources.
I'm sorry, I meant the validation of that. So you had a problem and a solution, right?
The validation, we just basically, I mean, people were nice enough to give us their time to talk to us, because in the end, this is all we need. So we didn't have any complicated study. We had like 2-3 pages of questionnaires, and I just needed their time from 5 to half an hour being the maximum, or 3 hours, as some doctor gave us afterwards. And then you basically get, this is how we got the data. And we did this with like, I don't remember by now, between 10 and 15 hospitals we did this.
I guess to build on top of the question, it's one thing to validate your idea through, I mean, you can ask everyone here, what do you think about the solution? It's like, oh yeah, that's cool. It's like, oh, how about this, how about that? And then you ask everyone, would you give me 5 francs right now for that, or 50 francs for that? It's like, well, I don't know, we'll see, once it starts going. So there's always that, there's the 2 types of validation. There's a validation of verbally saying that's a great idea, we need that, it works, and the other validation of pulling your wallet out and a credit card. And
so
I
the
think
validation, the validation that we did in those 3 months, it was only on the problem. We tried to identify what are the problems in communication that they face. And we tried to understand the workflow of communication for the ones who had more time. It was open question, because we didn't come from medical background, none of us. So for us, it was very interesting to understand the workflow and the communication in order to understand really also how we could design the product. So this was the first thing. We wanted to validate the problem, not the product. The product was not even there, so we could not have validated it. And then after we had that, we actually started validating the product. So we started developing something on open source, we killed it in the end. And then we went with that product to doctors, we let them play with it, give their feedback, what do they think? And that was developed in 1 day or 2 days. And then we killed that after we had enough insights. But they didn't pay for it, no. We went to the doctors, we didn't go to managers of hospitals. So that's why I say at the core of our technology, at the core of actually what we develop are doctors. And the reason why we do this, in order to have enough data and enough network effects to actually go to the CEOs now and actually present them, look, this is what we found, and now buy it.
So now you're in the sales
now I'm in the sales,
okay.
Yes.
So we, yes. Was there someone else up here? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sebastian, thanks so much.
Hi, Sebastian.
A few questions actually, which we'll ask too.
First question would be, how do you see your role as the CEO of the company? So how do you see the roles and responsibilities? What are your objectives, aims personally in this role for the company? And the second one might be a bit unfair, but you mentioned several times secure messaging. I would like to ask, what do you mean by secure?
Talk to Mark.
Messaging.
No, I can talk, yeah. So the first one, thank you very much for your question, Sebastian. So the first one is how I see my role as the CEO. So at the moment we are a very small company, right? So titles are just nice to have on a business card in the end, and also for us to know who is responsible for what. But for me, it's very important to continue driving my company and my team towards actually our vision, our goal. And this means getting customers, getting investors, making sure we don't run out of cash. And this is one of the big things. Then I think a big topic is when you start a company, it's culture. How do you create culture? And we started talking about culture in our first month. Again, the guy thought I'm crazy. But yeah, I believe very much that this is very important. The problem is when you are very busy, everybody's running around. I'm never in the office. I'm there. And Mark is managing the whole IT infrastructure and development and so on. It's very hard to create a culture and to always you define it once, you say, well, this is our values, but then implementing it. And this is also one of the challenges. The more you grow as a company, culture is very important, and it can kill you or it can lift you. And I had the pleasure, I was last week at Slash, and I spoke with one of the founders who basically scaled the company big time from 5 people to 180 people. And he told me one of the reasons they didn't fail, and it was in 5 years, everything, is culture. They had such a strong culture. And this is also very high on my agenda. So besides driving sales, making sure that the company grows in terms of customers, but also not running out of cash culture is very important. And the second topic is security, which basically means one thing. The data in healthcare in Switzerland, the law in Switzerland, but also in every country, is that the patient data has to stay in the country. So for that reason, we offer our solution on the premises of the hospital or in the cloud, and we have a specialized cloud like Prive. If you guys know, these guys are actually using the same cloud solution. They gather a lot of medical information, so it's a secure. So we use all those standards, HL7, FHIR, and so on. And if I have to go more into details, I'm not able to. And now we are also implementing fingertip, login, and M10, the same like e-banking and so on. So we have a different ways that we actually ensure security. We have an end-to-end encrypted for cloud solutions. You're welcome.
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
So we have, maybe we're starting to come to the end. We have 1 or 2 questions maybe that you get to. Yes.
I was working in the neuroscience, so I was visiting hospitals, psychiatric hospitals actually, so I understand the challenges that doctors are facing on a daily basis. So I think the technology you developed is really great, and it can eliminate a lot of inefficiencies in the healthcare industry. I have some questions related to your company, and basically you mentioned that at some point you decided to kill the technology development model via open innovation. What happened and why? Because you said that
it was not scalable.
Open source, yeah.
Yeah, it was open source, which means that you can build something super fancy even with video calling. I don't know exactly which platform they used overnight, sort of, but it's basically unscalable. And we want to have a scalable technology that actually we can create and play with it the way we want to own the code. So yeah, I mean, it was an easy decision.
It was good for a proof of concept, for
It's good for a proof of concept, it's good for a demo, it's good to show something when you go to a hospital so you don't show that you have nothing.
Right.
And then of course, I mean, as I said, it was looking very fancy. It had more features than we actually ever dreamt, but it's not necessarily that they were the right ones.
Yeah.
Does this answer your question, Monica?
Thank you. And the second question relates to startup financing. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I understood that at the beginning you self-finance yourself, basically.
Yes.
So at what moment you decided to bring the external investors, and why, and what is your recommendation regarding this stage of the startup? Why and when?
I think the idea of financing started in the first day, since when you pitch a startup weekend and you basically put it, the last slide, this is how much money we want. How the hell on earth we will get that money? You don't even know how much money you need actually at that stage. So it's the first company, it's the first time when I raised money. I mean, I went to a VC in August. I started in May. I had nothing. And it's again the same concept. You just go. And somehow people appreciate to see how driven you are and how persistent you are, and they see progress throughout time. And then basically, but seriously, in order to seriously to raise money, we had a deadline, and it was June 2017. And then we said we need to raise money until June 2017 because then we ran out of cash. I mean, personally. So that was a deadline. Of course, this deadline, I think it was even before April, and then in case we would not have made it, we would have extended it, I think is a typical thing. But then we managed to actually raise capital in June. So in June, we actually closed the deal. But it's a whole process. And I must say, all the people I spend most of the time with, investors, they didn't invest, and people who I met like this, they invested. Because I think at such an early stage, whoever believes in the team, because at the beginning you invest in the team, and yeah, if it's a good idea, if it's the right timing, I mean, it will do it. You do not need to you don't have too much due diligence at the beginning of a company. So I think it's always a trade-off of how much, I mean, in reality you can push your company so you don't give too much equity. I mean, the more you can keep it, you keep it, of course. Yeah, exactly, because you don't want to lose as a founder the company.
At that moment when you brought the external investors, fortunately, did you have already the product validated, or still it was a minimum viable product? Because you mentioned also at some point that your pivot changed, right, from one direction to the other. So what convinced the investor to join your venture? Because from one perspective, I can imagine that maybe you are in the stage where you don't have a prototype developed, but you, as you said at the beginning, you validate the problem, right? So maybe you tackle it with the questionnaire, right? And you see that really what you were thinking about, the hypothesis is valid because the questionnaire to doctors prove it. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, you might have a minimum viable product, as the startup theory says, right? And then you go to investor and say, well, wow, the prototype was tested by a couple of customers and they said it's great. So what was the moment that convinced actually the investors to invest in the company?
As I said, you don't go when you need money. You go much earlier. You go when you don't need money, actually. This is how you should raise money. You go and you pitch to every person you potentially can, and then you will learn actually also how to pitch, how to interact, how you also start to get a sense of people, to understand what they want and so on. So, but for us, I mean, our product was ready in the App Store. This is approved by Apple in July. We raised in June. So we had a product close to reality. But as I said, I mean, 1 year later, our product will be so different because it's a normal software is developing. We had several proof of concepts. We had a lot of validations we were already working with Insel Hospital. We didn't have revenue, so we had an investment pre-revenue. We had partners. We won a lot of different events. We won Venture Kick. We won 40,000 in cash from Venture Kick, from Post Finance, and so on. So of course, all of this creates your case. You are invited to several events, presenting on the stage, presenting your technology. So I think everything that you can make your case look good for investors, the better it is. But don't go when you have all of those checked. Go when you have nothing. And then if they like you as a person, if they believe in your idea, they will follow you. And then when you are ready, or when they feel that now is the moment, they will invest in your company.
So we're pretty much at the end of our time for tonight, but you're still around later
Yes,
this evening,
I'm
so
here.
if you have any questions, feel free to talk to Luiza. We like to wrap up our little chat with what we call rapid fire questions. So the first thing that comes to mind is, so it's just a series of short, quick questions, and then try to answer with just the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
So what is one item that you own that you would never sell?
I have blank mind. This ring.
What is your most unusual skill?
In very good intuition.
And what is more important, strength, speed, or stamina?
Stamina.
What historical figure do you most admire?
Historical figure I admire.
Could be present, past, future.
Princess Diana.
What is your favorite season of the year?
Summer. I'm a summer baby.
And when was the last time that you tried something new?
Now. I never did a fireside chat.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Beer or wine?
Wine.
Your favorite app besides Comed Health?
Slack.
What's one thing on your bucket list?
One thing on my bucket list, I would love to create an orphanage one day.
And if you could have the attribute of any animal, what would you choose? Which animal?
I would like to fly. I'd love to fly. So let's call eagle.
Yeah, that's nice. Amazing. Thank you so much, Luiza, for your time with us this evening and for the insights you shared with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, David.